Hi folks, Seth Leapson here. Thanks for watching my monologue. In these uncertain times, you may be thinking about personal protection. If you are, I urge you to visit my friends at Guns Etc. They'll help you find the perfect protection for yourself and your family, and they can even teach you how to use it. They've been protecting Arizonans for over 33 years, and they stand for the great principles this country was founded upon. Or you can just click on gunsetc.com. And if you like my monologues, please subscribe to 960 The Patriots YouTube channel. Welcome back and happy November 16th, 2020. Something came up Friday on the show I'd been turning over in my head. There are those now among us somewhat dejected, or depressed, to put it no higher, at the trending agreement and result with the presidential election. Trending. What's the use of politics if this happens? They ask. That's the question. We can talk about the question, and we will. But if we ask the question, loaded as it is, we have the moral obligation to answer it as well. Let's frame it this way. What's the use of politics or getting involved if the other side is always going to win? Then it becomes incumbent upon us to ask if we can live with consigning all our positions and opinions to defeat, doesn't it? Working in reverse, can we live with consigning all our positions and opinions to defeat? I don't think so. We may have to occasionally accept retail setbacks and defeats while working on our wholesale supply chain, perhaps. But if we don't, if we give up, if we consign and resign ourselves to minority status with a what's the use attitude, we consign ourselves and our fellow countrymen to a certain permanent left-wing oppression. We did not do that when Bill Clinton won the presidency. We did not do that when Barack Obama won the presidency. And goodness knows we did not do it at all after the FDR presidency. 4 terms of Roosevelt being elected did put conservatism in the dock and on the lam, but there was a concerted effort after it concluded that said, stop. Of course, you know I mean the founding of National Review and the arriving of William Buckley on the political scene. Now, I know National Review has fallen into some disfavor of late, but that's not really the point. The point was, if we wanted to stop more of the New Deal and all the progressivism FDR and the strongest Democratic Party in history were imposing on this nation, if we wanted to stop the cornering of the political market by progressivism, we had to open up a competing store. And the modern conservative movement was thus born. Born, not grown, born. Not adult, not victorious, birthed. We rallied behind the Goldwater movement in the early 1960s, and I was reminded of this watching a special on the Reagans last night. Politically, it was just Goldwater and Reagan basically harnessing the energy of the movement, and it was a big deal to get Goldwater nominated in 1964. Gosh knows there were other options, from Rockefeller to Romney. But that victory, internal victory we should call it, cast a great deal of doubt about the conservative cause because of the general election victory loss to LBJ. We then experienced what would be our constant and continued experience, the experience of being kicked in the head or the teeth by the moderates after every battle. The battle, I have to say, they too infrequently join. And to put it illustratively, George Romney walked out of the 1964 convention when Goldwater was nominated. Goldwater would never walk out of a convention where Romney nominated. We find too much of that today, too. The moderates in our party did not support the conservative cause over the past 4 years. They constantly and continually derided it, even giving financial and media help to the Democrats. We would never do that to their nominee. In truth, some of them were even not so moderate, but instead suffered from some sort of self-inflated sense of moral superiority to not join what they considered a vulgar leader or a vulgar crowd. The alternative, of course, would be, as we understand and long understood, the vulgarization of the country. That is what we conservatives fight. What is an empowered entertainment industry and social media industry and mainstream media industry if not exceedingly vulgar? What are the life and health policies of the left if not exceedingly vulgar? What is the re-racialization of society if not exceedingly vulgar? What is the downgraded and emasculated sense of patriotism and country if not exceedingly vulgar? What is the censorship and the vitiation of constitutional rights, if not exceedingly vulgar? What is physical brute force and anarchy and violence on behalf of one party against another on the streets of the nation's capital, no less, if not exceedingly vulgar? That is all the service of our fellow Republicans and conservatives not on board with our cause. That's what they contributed to, that vulgarity, those vulgarities. I hope they are happy, and I hope they are proud. It will not be good for our country. But that's just a departure. Back to my main point. We didn't give up after Goldwater in '64. We listened to the more moderate among us and took Nixon. There were other options in 1968. Reagan himself was offered as one and offered himself as one for a brief moment. And with Nixon, we got China, we got OSHA, we got the EPA, we got affirmative action, we got Roe versus Wade via his Supreme Court nominee, Harry Blackmun, and of course we got Woodward and Bernstein. Nearly so tarnished was the GOP name and brand by the time Nixon was done with it, that there was even an effort in 1974, after our trouncing, to rename the party. But the man who would not give up, Ronald Reagan, did not give up. He spoke to an eerily similar moment. It was at the Conservative Political Action Conference in 1975, saying this, quote, "It is easy for us to be discouraged as pundits hail that last election as a repudiation of our philosophy and even as a mandate of some kind or other." He continued, quote, "Can we live with ourselves if we, as a nation, betray our friends and ignore our pledge to the world? And if we do, who would ever trust us again? To consider committing such an act so contrary to our deepest ideals is symptomatic of the erosion of standards and values. And this adds to our discontent. We did not seek world leadership. It was thrust on us. It has been our destiny almost from the first moment this land was settled. If we fail to keep our rendezvous with destiny, or as John Winthrop said in 1630, deal falsely with our God, we shall be made a story and a byword throughout the world." Close quote. Americans are hungry to feel once again a sense of mission and greatness. I don't know about you, but I am impatient with those Republicans who, after the last election, rushed into print saying, "We must broaden the base of our party," Reagan put it, when what they meant was not to broaden the party, but to fuzz up and blur even more the differences between ourselves and our opponents. Our people look for a cause to believe in. Is it a third party we need, he asked, or is it a new and revitalized second party, raising a banner of no pale pastels, but bold colors which make it unmistakably clear where we stand in all the issues troubling the people, he asked. Well, he went on to run for president the following year, 1976, came really close to getting the nomination and lost it to Jerry Ford, who was custom-made from the Romney-Rockefeller wing of the party. Indeed, Jerry Ford even made Nelson Rockefeller his vice president. Conservatives were saddened, dejected, and what did Ronald Reagan do? Why, he took to the radio, he took to the speech and campaign circuit, and he took on Bob Dole and George H.W. Bush and Howard Baker in 1979 and 1980, and he won the primaries and became a two-term president. It was said that in 1964, Barry Goldwater ran for president, and 16 years later, the votes were finally counted. But of course, Reagan, as great as he was not perfect. Put not your faith in princes. And we did not immanentize conservatism up and down and throughout the party. And George H.W. Bush, who criticized that vision thing, yielded us pastels that could not paint over the bold colors of the Clintons. And it took us a while to find that painter again, didn't it? I don't mean to gloss over George W. Bush, but there is a reason we look back as conservatives to the presidency of Ronald Reagan and not very much at all to the presidency of George W. Bush, whose people and he himself would not help us with Donald Trump and did everything they could to help the Democrats in defeating him, which was truly just defeating us. In 1964, Ronald Reagan warned, quote, "Our natural, unalienable rights are now considered to be a dispensation of government, and freedom has never been so fragile, so close to slipping from our grasp as it is at this moment," close quote. He was right then, and it's become worse now, much worse. But we cannot go on as just a political movement, and I think I shall never again say we are a political or ideological movement, we conservatives. I'd rather we start thinking of ourselves and calling ourselves a teaching movement or an education movement. As I said Friday, you cannot expect a moderate, much less center-right country when our high schools and colleges churn out together about 8 million graduates a year, about 4 million from each, most indoctrinated in a leftist or 1619 view of America. How do you keep a country centered, moderate, much less center-right, when they're churning out 8 million a year? Consider that, millions and millions of indoctrinates put into the real world of America, and all that entails, be it the military, business, further education, but certainly politics every single year. And those indoctrinates have spent 12 to 16 years being molded into their worldview, history, and the view of this country. We see conservatism and think common sense. The schools see conservatism and they see a series of thoughts that are unwelcome, to be censored, to be wiped away and shamed. We see America and think beauty and natural rights and opportunity and freedom and equality and greatness. The schools see America as a long trail of abuses where misery is the beginning and success is the exception, where guilt is the established or assumed and default emotion. We are not just combating ideology here, we are combating psychology as well, an ideology wedded to a psychology. That's a toxic confluence. That's a lot to push against. That's a lot to try to address. But we do have something in our favor, truth. It needs its armaments and allies and articulators, but I'm still convinced it's far better to have truth on your side than lies, no matter how strong the enforcements and troops on the other side. Reagan did not give in to it in 1964, 1968, or 1976. Donald Trump did not in 2016 or since, and neither shall we. We cannot. As Ronald Reagan put it in 1975 at CPAC, he concluded his speech this way, quote, "We will maintain whatever level of strength is necessary to preserve our free way of life. A political party cannot be all things to all people. It must represent certain fundamental beliefs which must not be compromised to political expediency or simply to swell its numbers. I do not believe I have proposed anything that is contrary to what has been considered Republican principle. It is at the same time the very basis of conservatism, and it is time to reassert that principle and raise it to full view. And if there are those who cannot subscribe to these principles, then let them go their way." I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.